Okay, imagine a family so obsessed with power they willingly sacrifice the health and sanity of their own children for generations. Now, this isn't some fantasy novel, it's the real, tragic story of the Habsburg dynasty. They're on this calculated quest for genetic purity, a quest that backfired in the most devastating way possible.
You know, this wasn't just some thought experiment. For the women of Europe's most powerful family, this was their waking nightmare. They were born into a genetic prison built by their own ancestors, and frankly, there was no way out.
To really wrap our heads around their suffering, we've got to look at the structure of their family. And what you find isn't so much a family tree with all these sprawling branches. It's more like a tangled, suffocating knot.
And here's the wild part. This wasn't some rare accidental thing. No, this was a deliberate, repeated strategy they used to keep all their power and wealth in the family.
It happened over and over again. The lines of who was who got dangerously blurred. You have Philip II of Spain marrying his own niece, Anne of Austria. And that wasn't an exception. It was the norm. It turned their family tree into this just complete mess of overlapping lines.
So let's be crystal clear about this. This was a calculated breeding program, and the human cost was absolutely devastating. This had nothing to do with love. It was a political and, as it turns out, a genetic catastrophe in the making.
It just begs the question, right? Why? I mean, why would any family knowingly go down such a destructive path? Well, the answer is tangled up in this powerful and ultimately fatal idea they had about themselves.
For centuries, all these European royals really believed their authority came straight from God. They thought their blue blood was fundamentally different, more sacred than a commoner's, so they figured marrying within their own family would preserve that divine purity.
And this just says it all. This was their family motto. The Habsburgs basically perfected the art of political marriage, but as we're about to see, these marriages were anything but happy. They were in fact calculated genetic disasters.
So, let's move on and really see the consequences. We're going to look at the lives of 3 people who had to bear the physical and psychological scars of this obsession.
First up, Joanna of Castile. History calls her Joanna the Mad, but her story shows how a genetic tendency for mental illness could be turned into a political weapon. What was likely severe depression and anxiety got twisted and labeled as insanity, giving her own father and son the perfect excuse to lock her away for 46 years and grab power for themselves.
So, if Joanna's story shows the psychological damage of the curse, the life of Margaret Theresa reveals the absolutely devastating physical side of it, and it was all captured for everyone to see on canvas by a master painter.
At first glance, you just see a little royal kid in a fancy dress. But the painter, Velázquez, he was a master observer. He was way too diplomatic to just come out and say, hey, this princess has serious health problems, but he was too honest of an artist to hide it completely.
And what's so fascinating is how his paintings basically document the curse in real time. If you look closely, the signs are all there. That slightly protruding jaw, a classic sign of what became known as the Habsburg jaw. The distant, kind of vacant look in her eyes, her poor posture. They're all subtle clues to the genetic catastrophe that was unfolding inside her.
Margaret Theresa had zero control over her life. She was engaged to her own uncle when she was just a toddler, married off to him at 15, and was immediately expected to produce heirs. Her body, already weak from genetic problems, was just shattered by constant pregnancies. She died at just 21 years old. This whole destructive practice, it reached its devastating and really its inevitable end with one man, Charles II of Spain. He was the final tragic result of centuries of compounding genetic damage.
To put this into scientific terms, his inbreeding coefficient was over 25%. Okay, so what that means is he was more inbred than a child born to a brother and sister. The family tree had finally, literally, choked itself to death.
So how does this even happen scientifically? I mean, how did trying to keep the bloodline pure actually end up poisoning it?
Well, the answer is a biological concept called inbreeding depression. Basically, it's what happens when a gene pool gets too small and all these harmful, hidden genetic traits start bubbling up to the surface way too often. All right, let's break it down. Think of it like a genetic lottery. Most of us carry some bad tickets or harmful genes, but they're hidden. In a big, diverse population, the odds of 2 parents passing on the exact same bad ticket to their child are super low. But the Habsburgs? They kept drawing tickets from the same tiny little bucket, generation after generation.
They were basically stacking the deck against their own kids, making it almost certain that these hidden genetic problems would eventually show up.
The Spanish Habsburg line died with Charles II, but their story left behind this really profound, complicated, and deeply ironic legacy that, believe it or not, we're still learning from today.
And this is where the story takes this truly tragic, ironic twist. The suffering of all these people, which was meticulously documented in court records by their doctors, became invaluable data for the development of modern genetics. Their pain actually helped science understand hereditary diseases.
So yeah, their pain gave us scientific knowledge, but their stories teach us much more important lessons. They're this stark reminder of what happens when you prioritize an idea over actual people, and how easily human beings, especially women, can be reduced to just a function. But they also show the incredible courage of people who tried to be human in an impossible system.
And ultimately, the Habsburg curse forces us to ask a question that goes way beyond their fancy courts. It's a question about our own values, about what we choose to put first. Their story is a timeless and, frankly, a terrifying warning about the true cost of obsession.